Welcome to the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. Today on the show, I have with me Carlin Hostert. She's a member of the Growth Company, one of the people or companies that I am a part of as I get business coaching from people who have already been doing the thing. And so she's going to be talking to us today about becoming an owner and some of the things that are involved with that and building the systems and processes behind running a successful real estate business. How are you doing today, Carlin?
Pretty good. I'm just hanging out with my cat. You can't see him right now, but he's here. Other than that, pretty good. The kids are playing, they're keeping themselves occupied, and I'm just getting some work done. My husband, James, is actually on his way back from Tampa right now, and he just took his real estate exam. So great news in that area as well.
Awesome. Congratulations on that. And he's also the one that helps with a lot of the underwriting for the Growth Co., right?
Yes, he does all of the underwriting. Like, I've tried to sit down with him and be like, explain this to me, but those numbers just go over my head. So he does all of the math and the number stuff.
Okay. So the math and number stuff on his side. And then I know you coordinate a lot of the events and the lives and stuff that our business coach, Jesse, does, right?
Yes. So I do a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, navigating teams, making sure, if we're running campaigns or anything, everything's on schedule for that. I also am a fond lover of worksheets. So anything that you see that comes out on paper, that is my doing. I really love being able to design and create and build things that allow people to look into a little bit more deeper of a perspective.
You're the person that hands out all the homework.
I am.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Well, that's it's actually a good thing, though, because most of us don't tend to take action unless we have some kind of a challenge or invitation to do so. So the fact that you're setting things up with a little bit of a framework makes it easier for people to get from the point where they're not taking action to where they're actually engaging in the content.
So a lot of that stemmed from my childhood, actually. And I know you were going to touch on that a little bit, so I'll be brief with this. But I actually I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was about 10. And when I started getting older, I really struggled in school. Well, they put me in this curriculum called School of Choice. And basically, it was all of the ADD and ADHD kids smashed together in this one room. But the way they did things was based on your learning style. So we didn't take tests, we built projects. We didn't write essays, we created songs, things like that. So everything was very in tune with the different ways that we learn. And I've taken that from my childhood and my upbringing and really implemented it into the Growth Co. because there's so many ways to learn and life is not structured to just one.
Yeah, well, that's true. And I think that there's a lot of utility in that and understanding how it is that you learn and being able to modify the way you do things so that you're more likely to win. My big question for most of my guests, and the reason I do this is because there's a lot of people in the audience that come from different backgrounds, is what led you to decide to get into real estate in the first place? Like, why choose that? There's all kinds of things that you could choose to go after to try to make money.
So I actually did a couple different things. Again, going back to ADHD, I did what they call hobby hopping. So I put my foot into like, okay, what would it look like to professionally tie dye? That was something. And then it got to a point that I was like, I don't think I like this. Yeah. So I've always had kind of like an entrepreneurial mind, and I've always wanted to do something. I just never knew what it was. And so growing up, one of the things that my mom would do with me, we'd be driving. And of course, we didn't have cell phones to stare at that time in the car. So we'd be driving and she'd go, oh, Carlin, look at how beautiful that house is. Look, if you just fixed up the porch and if you did this and, maybe if you had put a plant here and you had vines. And she always instilled these big creative ideas. And so the older I got, the more my brain was like, oh, wow, that's a beautiful house. Like, I don't go look for the big, pretty mansions. I look for the things that are dilapidated because I'm like, oh, wow, you could do so many cool things. That's such a cool canvas. And so the artistic side of my brain was just like, I can make that so beautiful. So how we ended up in real estate was actually by accident. what had happened is our AC had blown up a couple, not a couple, I guess it was probably about 5-ish years ago, 4 or 5-ish years ago, somewhere around there. Our AC had literally exploded, like boom, big bang,
Leave a
coolant
hole in the wall,
everywhere.
see it everywhere, that kind of thing.
I was terrified that James was dead
Oh,
because he
wow.
was out there working, and right next to where our AC was in our old house, there was a door that came inside. But I had gone out the other door, like further down the house. So I came out and I didn't realize that he had gone in, and I saw the explosion happen, and I was just like, "Oh no!"
Pretty
And
wild.
yeah, it was horrifying. So I ran over there. Thankfully, James popped out the other door. I was like, "Oh, thank God." Okay. But then there was that next dilemma where it was like, okay, this is not a cheap fix. And
Yeah.
we're a military family. And despite what people think, the military is stable, not rich. So we're sitting there, we're like, okay, we've got a kid on the way, we've got 3 kids at home. How in heaven's sake are we going to do this? And so I naturally started digging down the rabbit hole and was like, okay, there's these YouTube videos. Oh, here's 3 great ways to make money in crypto. So I looked into crypto. I was like, this seems not great for me. And I looked into stocks, not great for me. I looked into a whole bunch of other options. So sorry.
No, you're
And
okay.
it got to the point that I ended up finding a video that was like, you can make money in wholesaling. I was like, all right, let's see what happens here. So I dug down that rabbit hole. James came home from work. I had bought like 10 books. He's like, okay, we're doing this. We're committed now. And so he was like, hey, you should reach out to my friend Jesse. So James and Jesse were actually active duty together.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so they worked together. I think they were at, I want to say it was Luke in Phoenix that they worked together. So James goes, you should reach out to my friend Jesse. I know he does real estate. Like I see him posting about things sometimes. Reach out to him. So I sent Jesse a message and was like, hey, you don't know me, but I actually married someone you work with. And I mean, from there, it's just kind of like the rest is history. Like Jesse and I, he would coach me and guide me. And he's like, okay, if you're wholesaling, you need to go do this. And so I started out wholesaling. And we got 10, 15 deals somewhere around there under our belt. And I remember calling Jesse one day and I was just like, dude, I hate this. I hate this so much. And so that's the point where we kind of transitioned from wholesaling over into buy and hold. And that is kind of where my happy place is. This year, I want to start doing fix and flips and really start putting my foot into bringing the vision I saw as a child to fruition.
Taking those canvases and being creative with them, huh?
Yeah, there's one house down the street that I've got my eye on. I just haven't had the time to, sit down and find them.
Okay, that's pretty neat. I like the fact that you recognized that you didn't like doing wholesaling. Just out of curiosity, what was it about wholesaling that you didn't like? What made it so terrible?
Working with my husband. He and I, we are very good together, but he was working the acquisition side and I was working the disposition side. And if you've ever been in wholesaling, you know that those two kind of rub very easily. And so after our last wholesale, it was in our town, I looked at him and I was just like, I'm done. I would so much rather have a peaceful marriage than have a boatload of money in the bank. I'm done with wholesaling. We're moving on now.
I like that. One of my personal beliefs is that no amount of financial success can compensate for failure in the home.
Yeah,
So,
so we work really well together now. We don't wholesale anymore, and it's much more fluid.
well, cool. I like that you figured that out. So, what was the transition from wholesaling to buy and hold like? What kind of issues did you run into that? Did it just smooth sailing, or what happened?
No, I think the biggest issue transitioning is, and it's the issue with any new job, it's the issue with any sort of new territory, is just really understanding the process to it. And I think that's where, like, I used to be a pistachio driver. Let's do this. I used to be a pistachio driver. I took people out on tours of a pistachio farm. I spent weeks learning this dang script to explain the dang pistachio trees. And it wasn't easy. I had to go out and ride with the people that were doing those tours every single day. And for context, that tour went out every half hour.
Wow.
And it was
You're getting
just
lots of reps
so,
in then, aren't you?
it was tedious and repetitive and just mentally exhausting. And that's kind of how taking on any new venture in real estate or any new venture in life is you have to learn these things, and it's exhausting and it's hard, and it's, you know, you mess up the script here and you were supposed to say that back at that tree, and you know, you were supposed to explain why the rose bush is important to a vineyard and you missed it, and now people have no context, and you and that's what it was like going into buy and hold. Is like, well, you missed the vineyard, you forgot to explain why the pistachio is important, you forgot to let people know why wind is important to this tree. And that's how things were getting into buy and hold. It felt like I was missing steps all the time. But that's part of the process. And so yeah, there were a ton of setbacks. Like, there, it was really annoying more than anything else, because I don't I don't necessarily give up. I just recognize when things are not working the way I need them to and adjust. So, like the tie dye thing, I was just like, this isn't what I want to do. I can still be an entrepreneur, maybe find something else to do though. And that's exactly what buy and hold was. It was just like, oh, you know, I forgot that I needed to open escrow, and I forgot I needed to do this, and I forgot that, you know, I needed to put landlord whatever in place. Like, I all these weird things. And so just having to understand the process was honestly the biggest hurdle, because once you figure out the process, it's much more streamlined.
Did a lot of that come from doing more repetitions, or how did you eventually get to a point where you kind of understood all the process and all the parts that needed to go together?
Reps and having people I could talk to. I think one of the things that anyone will fail at, and this is not to be mean, is just trying to partner with people who don't have the experience. And it's not a bad thing, because those people can be awesome and amazing individuals. But if you don't have the experience and you partner with someone who doesn't have the experience, it's the blind leading the blind.
Yeah. Okay.
So making sure that you're partnering with people who have the things and who have done the things, instead of being like, hey, you're new, I'm new, let's be friends, let's try this out.
It's kind of neither one of you are going to be able to spot things that might be out of place until it's too late then.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that's really useful to know. I actually had a partnership that I attempted to do, which was kind of in that scenario. We tried to do direct mailing to go after foreclosures. And we were pretty good at getting the mail and the letters out, but almost everything else didn't pan out. And I think part of it was just the fact that we were both working nights. And so there was no coverage in half of the day because you have to sleep sometime. But
that's what
we
I hear,
eventually,
at least.
yeah, we eventually dissolved the partnership because we realized that it wasn't going to work out the way we'd envisioned.
Yeah,
And,
and it's not a bad thing. Recognizing that a partnership doesn't work isn't necessarily a bad thing, and I don't see it as like, hey, we can't talk anymore, we're going to say a lot of mean things about each other. It's just recognizing like, hey, this wasn't the strength that we needed, so maybe it's just time to move on.
yeah, and I think we left on good terms. He's still doing his thing. I'm still trying to figure out my end, and can't think of anything that I would say that I could say anything bad about him. It's just we were both in the same spot, you know, blind leading the blind.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite mentors is Dan Martell, and then pretty soon I'm actually getting ready to in about 3 weeks, James and I are going to be headed to Vegas for Growth Conference with Grant Cardone.
Okay,
so I'm
cool.
really excited about that.
Well, and I've heard him speak at some of Pace Morby's events, but I like some of the content that he throws out on Instagram and the other social media platforms as well. Isn't he kind of the guy who come up with the idea of 10X, or is that just something he's okay?
Yeah, Grant Cardone is 10X, and that's actually the foundation of the Growth Conference is 10X Growth Con. So this event I'm personally excited about. He doesn't release the speaker lineup, which drives me absolutely nuts. But every previous year, he's had people like John Maxwell. He had Donald Trump. He had Kevin Hart there one time. And it's just, he takes people from all sorts of different avenues and brings them into a centrally located place. It is like, learn everything you can. So I'm just so excited about that.
Yeah, it sounds like it'll be really cool. I'll have to touch bases with you and see how it went.
Of course.
All right, well, cool. Basically, just kind of getting everything sorted out. What exactly do you think the business looks like? What do you have planned moving forward?
So there's a couple different avenues that we can be looking at here. So James and I on our end have some pretty exciting plans that we're going to be working with, seeing as he is officially a licensed real estate agent as of today. He is going to be getting his brokerage license, and then from that point we're going to be focused on being able to create sustainable housing. And then at that point also, like I said, I want to be doing fix and flips. With him being a licensed agent, he can list my projects for me. And then on the Growth Coast side of things, we've got a lot of stuff that we're working on kind of behind the scenes. As you know, we're working on getting everyone onto stages, growing and expanding everyone's reach. Growth Co, we're working on getting everyone onto stages. And then one of the things I would like to do is actually, and Jesse has heard tidbits of this, but I personally really want to go on like a Growth Co cruise or something. That would be the coolest thing ever.
I think that'd be really neat. One of my bucket list items is I've actually already gone skydiving, which was originally what the bucket list item was. But I'd like to go to somewhere like the Caribbean, around Hawaii, and skydive over the ocean.
That would be really cool.
I think it'd be neat.
I have not built up the strength to go skydiving yet.
It's one of the most intense things I've ever done. I swear I could not sleep for like 2 days afterwards because the adrenaline was so, yeah.
You're just jiving.
Yeah. So by the time I had come down to the ground, it was only like 2.5 minutes from 10,000 feet to when I hit the landing zone. And I swear for 48 hours, I could not sleep because of the fact that my body was like, we almost died. Gotta keep ourselves aware now.
I just threw my body at the ground voluntarily.
But there's no other way I can describe it. It was just, it was the most intense and wild experience I've ever had.
I've got 2 boys that are 15 months apart, and they're having a whole MMA throwdown right now.
Got it.
The other one is so mean.
So I'm assuming the one that's mean is the one that won that conflict.
Yeah, it's the little one. It's the little one. He's ruthless.
He's like, I got a size disadvantage. I got to make up for it in my attitude.
Yeah, I looked over and he had the 4-year-old in a headlock. I was just like, anyway.
So that's part of growing up and having siblings. So you can't let them get too out of hand, but it's going to happen no matter what you do.
Yeah, I just told him. I think James just got home too. My goodness. So this is what the day in the life of my household looks like. If you're wondering why I'm never on camera, this is exactly why.
Well, it's okay. I have a son of my own, and I think that people knowing that people that are families out there doing what we're doing, it'll give people the inspiration to go out and do it themselves. You don't have to live in a nice, fancy, white studio apartment in order to go out and be successful doing this.
So what's actually funny is when James and I started wholesaling, I was pregnant with Axton. So the little one that had the older one in the headlock, yeah, he was still in my belly. And we have a photo somewhere where James and I are both sitting in the hospital on our laptops.
Doing the work, right? Hustling.
While I was in labor, we were actually still working on some of the leads that we had.
That's fun. Get the grind off. But no, that's really cool because I think that love and relationships are built on the experiences you have together.
Oh yeah.
That's really neat. I know that you've also mentioned the dream of building an elephant sanctuary here in the United States. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so referring back to the military thing, we were stationed in South Korea for a year. And one of the things I wanted to do was go to Thailand and go to the sanctuaries. And so naturally, I spin myself down a rabbit hole anytime I'm interested in something. And so I was doing the research, I was looking into everything. And this was 2020. So it was COVID. There was no guarantee that we were going to get to go to Thailand. And we actually didn't get to go to Thailand. And I think part of that was a saving grace, because in a lot of my research, I found that a lot of the sanctuaries that are in East Asia are actually very unethical. They are used almost like cattle. They're used as carnival rides. People just get to like knock on them and do all this stuff. And so to me, elephants are one of the most intelligent animals on the planet. They're one of the most gentle animals on the planet. And they are also the biggest land mammal. And so I'm sitting here and looking at it as like, why are we being so ruthless? Because a lot of them, you know, a lot of them are used similar to how horses are used on a much higher caliber. So they're used to like pull logs, they're used to build buildings and stuff like that. But it's intense through their entire life. They don't have that point where they're retired. And so, you know, when they're done with them in one spot, they'll sell them off to another company. That company will use them even more. And it's really heartbreaking. And so one of the things that I want to do is create a sanctuary in the United States where it's kind of like a Sahara or like a safari, where they just have the space, they have the land, they have the resources they need, and you can be in their space. They're not in your space. It doesn't work that way. So you can go out, you can go see them, you can give them food, you can help take care of them, but you're not going to ride them. You're not going to climb on them. You're not going to force them into a cage. They're just going to be able to do the elephant thing. And that's just kind of the way I see it in my head, because they're beautiful.
Thank you for that. I'm reminded of Steve Irwin, and when he talked about how he wants as much money as possible so that he can spend every cent of it on conservation.
And he has done that. His family has kept that legacy.
Oh, that's really cool. I like that. And I imagine that the part of the reason you're in real estate is so that you can get to a point where you can fund that project, right?
Well, it's not just funding. It's in real estate, there's also the resources. So you're able to build relationships with capital, obviously funding. You're able to build relationships who are people that are familiar with land and development, things like that. You're able to build relationship with contractors. You're able to build relationships with really any avenue that it would take to be able to build something on such a large caliber.
No, it makes sense to me because there's a lot of relationships that might not be directly involved in real estate that are still going to have connections to it. Like, for example, real estate attorneys might know the laws and everything that you're going to have to follow in order to build something like that.
Yeah. So as it stands, I haven't put a whole lot of focus on this personal mission in a while. But when I presented this idea to some of the people I know for my elephant sanctuary alone, I've got millions of dollars raised.
Very cool. I love to see how that's going to turn out for you.
Yeah, it really, I think this is important for anyone listening, is when you're passionate about something, people will see that. And so the people that I know that are like, I will definitely help you fund your elephant sanctuary, they're passionate about the same things I am. They care about conservation. They care about animal ethics. They care about making sure these creatures are taken care of and respected in a way that they deserve. And so being able to create a vision where, you know, yes, it's my vision, but it aligns with what other people want. It's really easy to do the thing when you're passionate about the thing you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. The thing about having a dream like that, I think, is important, or at least for me, this is what resonates, is that there's a lot of causes you could dedicate yourself to. But I think it's more important to dedicate ourselves to causes where you're helping people or animals that can't help themselves. And I think that aligns with that. So that's really neat. I'm excited to see where you take this.
Me too.
Well, on that note, where can people go to connect with you, Carlin?
The best place to connect with me is actually Facebook. So I check Facebook very religiously. I am constantly on it. If you need me, that's the best place to message. I do have Instagram, so you can reach out there. I'm not quite as active on Instagram. If you go look at my Instagram, you can tell it's a photo dump for the pictures I take during the day, but you can find me there too. So my Instagram handle is at Carlin Hostert. It's very straightforward. It's literally just my name.
I'll make sure to include all of these links in the YouTube description as well. Would you have any recommendations for resources or learning materials that other people who are just getting started might need to be successful in the space, or maybe follow and build up their own dream?
That's a loaded question. So I have dozens of resources. I think for anyone starting anywhere, as much as I'd love to be like, hey, go read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yeah, definitely a good book. Read it. But I would always recommend starting out with the book Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill.
Oh, okay. That's the man who also wrote Think and Grow Rich.
Correct. But Think and Grow Rich doesn't make nearly as much sense if you don't read Outwitting the Devil first.
Okay.
So
Well, I'll definitely write that down myself because I haven't read that one yet.
yeah, and actually don't read it. Listen to it on Audible.
Listen to it. Okay.
Listen to it on Audible because the person who narrates it actually communicates in different tones. So he speaks in one voice when he's speaking as the interviewer, and then he speaks in a different tone completely as the interviewee. And it is spine chilling.
Okay.
And then the second book I would recommend is, right now we're in book club. Right now we're actually reading a book by Cal Newport. It's called Deep Work. I have not finished reading it, but as it stands, it is very thought-provoking and really puts into perspective like how we navigate our day and the things that we're doing in our day that are actually productive versus the things that are just kind of like, we're doing it.
Okay. And is the book club that you do, is that only for people who are part of Growth Co., or is that something that other people would be able to join you in doing? What does that look like?
I want everyone in book club. It's
Okay.
not specifically for Growth Co. It is for anyone and everyone. I don't think that you can achieve the success you want if you're not surrounding yourself with people who are working towards the success that you're trying to achieve. So everyone's invited to book club. Our next book club meeting is February 27th, and that's at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Okay. February 27th.
Next
People are
Thursday.
probably not going to be able to go to that one because I tend to take a couple of weeks to do the editing of the podcast. And so they're not probably going to get to go to that one. But are you doing it on Thursdays? Is that what the situation is?
So it's not regular Thursdays. There's a schedule that I have for it, and I can actually send you the schedule if you would like. We're reading 4 books this year. That's it. So a book a quarter. And the objective of that is to really take the time to dive into the book and divulge it, dissect it, understand it, communicate what your thoughts are. So I'll send you the schedule for book club. That way, if you want to share it, you have the ability to do so. The link is reoccurring. So it's the same link every time we meet. It's just the schedule on Thursdays isn't consistent with what Zoom wants it to be.
Okay.
So I can't actually put it into a calendar.
Well, I will go ahead and put the link in the YouTube description so people can check that out. And since they are going to have the ability to reach out to you, they can get the specific times and dates for that as well.
Yes.
Okay, that works. And then I guess before we end the interview today, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we finish?
I think the one thing that I would want to share with anyone is you're never failing. You're learning, but you're not failing. The only point you actually start failing is the point where you stop. And I think that's really important because through my life, at least, I felt like a failure a lot. But when I look back at those moments, there was so much growth that happened in that moment. And I couldn't be more thankful for that point in my life.
Thank you for that. I think that the struggles that we have and the failures, we want to call them failures, are really the places where we get the most growth and development. And maybe they're not exactly fun to experience, but they're so important. And I do think that in hindsight, you look back at them and you get that gratitude. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today. This has been the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. Have a wonderful day.